let us discuss an idea about the Purim story. The Gemara talks about an interesting halacha, which is brought in the Shulchan Aruch. We're taught that a person is obligated to read the Megillah at night and to reread the Megillah in the morning. And this is a bit odd, let's say, because the Megillah is not a short prayer, for example, like we do on Hanukkah, or even on Purim in the benching or in the Shemona Esrei. When we say Al HaNisim, we have a short prayer that commemorates and discusses the miracle. The Megillah is a 10-chapter, scroll, and it's lengthy with much detail. Now, if we've read the entire Megillah the night before, why are we reading the same story again the next morning? Now, imagine if you met someone that you haven't seen for years, and you told him all of the things that happened to you while you were gone. Now, if in the morning you got together again and started to tell him the same story, he would look at you like you were nuts. Why would you tell the story again in detail as if the person doesn't know what you're talking about? He knows everything from the night before. Here too, we read the entire story of Purim, and we know everything that happened from beginning to end. So why are we repeating the exact same story again the next morning? To make this even more difficult, let's appreciate, why do we even read the Megillah? What is the purpose that we read the Megillah year after year? So the Gemara explains that it's in order to publicize the miracle that God saved us during the Persian exile. So think about it. If we get together, man, woman, child, everybody gets together that night in shul and hears the story, hears that we were saved. So what could we possibly be adding in publicizing the miracle by saying the same thing again? We already know, and we already talked about the fact that we were saved. It would seem like it would be much better investment of our time to spend the day, having a celebration, getting drunk, having a party, giving out the gifts to the poor, and shlach manot, food gifts to our friends. There's so much to do the next day. Why do we have to spend additional time with this obligation to hear the entire Megillah twice? So these are the questions that one can ask on this halacha. So let us look at the idea of miracles in depth in order to appreciate, because if our goal in Purim is to publicize the miracle of Purim, so let us appreciate what exactly the miracle of Purim is. And in order to do that, we'll of course discuss all different miracles. So in general, miracles are divided into two categories. We call them hidden miracles and open miracles. An open miracle is essentially a miracle that is above nature. It's a miracle that breaks the rules of nature. Similar to the miracles we experienced when we left Egypt. When God split the sea, He caused hail to descend and turn into fire. Man, this heavenly food to descend from heaven. The open miracle is such that a person that was there at the time could not say there was no miracle. It's impossible to deny. A hidden miracle is not quite the same. A hidden miracle, though one can experience some type of divine providence, one can feel the hand of God behind what's going on and feel that God saved them or helped them, but it's not the type of miracle that you can't deny. It's a miracle that happens within the way nature runs. There's nothing supernatural about a hidden miracle. A hidden miracle could be, for example, a story with myself and my family. Baruch Hashem, we were saved from an almost lethal car accident. My wife and I were driving with our newborn baby to pay a Shiva call. And on the highway, so I was sitting in the back with the baby, and I just fell asleep. The baby fell asleep. That's fine. We were okay. But the problem was that the front driver's seat, my wife, she also fell asleep, and that was the big problem. So we're all sitting there sleeping, going about 70 miles an hour, until we hear the loud noise that you get when you reach the bumps on the side of a road. So we all wake up to a speeding car that was a little bit out of control. My wife tried to get control of the steering wheel. Unfortunately, though, at that speed, when you try to turn the wheel, it's so abrupt that the car started spinning in different directions. And, things seem to happen so slow. So I remember thinking about, oh my gosh, we're getting into one of those accidents. This is very serious. It's very dangerous. And just about the point where we would have started flipping over, doing some somersaults, the car was close enough to the grass and started sliding. And we did a 180, and then we started driving backwards. And things were going okay for a couple of seconds, and then we realized, wait a minute, we can't go backwards forever. And someone screamed, or I screamed, stop, hit the brakes. And, because we were approaching an overpass, which was also dangerous, could have hit behind us. But in the end, Baruch Hashem, we stopped the car, and everyone was fine. Nobody was hurt. Just for safety, we had a tow truck pull the car out in case there was some type of oil or that could start a fire. But everything was fine. We started the car actually and continued on our way to pay a Shiva call. And it's funny, when we got back to the road and I looked where our car went off the road, it was amazing to see because it almost looked like we did a field goal. You know, when you kick a field goal, there were two metal beams sticking up, and our car went right through the two metal beams. 1 or 2 feet to either side, we would have been, who knows what would have happened. We would have hit these metal beams at such a speed, and would have certainly caused a lot of damage, perhaps even danger. So when I look back on that story, although, you know, if I tell it to people that don't believe in God, don't believe in divine providence, they might tell me, listen, you were lucky. But I understand and believe that Hashem protected me and my family on that day, and I have to give thanks to Hashem for that. Anyhow, getting back to the Purim story. So these are two kinds of miracles. One is called a hidden miracle, and one is called an open miracle. But what I'd like to suggest is a third type of miracle in order to appreciate really the type of miracle that we're celebrating in the Purim story. Because the hidden miracle that we spoke about was, though it's hidden, still one can notice that God comes and saved you and did some type of miracle. But there's a deeper, more hidden type of providence from God, which is really an extremely hidden miracle. The Talmud mentions the idea of God making miracles that even the person he does the miracle for has no idea a miracle was done for him. Now this is the deepest, most hidden kind of miracle, because there's nothing that happens that indicates to any type of miracle or saving. And that is this third level miracle, that we don't even realize a miracle happened. And this is hinted to in a verse that says that God does wonders. Osed niflaot levado. God does wonders all unto himself, meaning he's the only one that knows that a miracle occurred. This is the type of miracle that we are actually celebrating on Purim. On Purim, the story that we talk about began and lasted about almost 10 years. 9 to 10 years is really the storyline of the Purim Megillah. Now, each of the events that occurred from the feast to each of the events on the way, Esther being taken, Haman rising to power, and so on, each event by itself just looked like random events. We did not see anything special in each of the individual events. As a matter of fact, the opposite. Each event that occurred looked bad for the Jewish people. You know, Esther was taken, when Haman rose to power and wanted to kill Mordechai, this all looked bad. But at the moment that things turned around and Haman was hung on the gallows that he built for Mordechai, at that moment, we saw the hand of Hashem save Mordechai and kill Haman. And at that moment, looking back in retrospect, we were able to see how each event that preceded that salvation was connected in a miraculous, unique way. Event after event, we saw the hidden hand of God laying the foundation, laying the pieces in the right places in order to save us. That type of miracle, this hidden miracle that can only be experienced after it happens, is what we call a hidden miracle. And in order to commemorate this type of miracle that you can only experience by looking back, we could say that the rabbis tell us to read the Megillah twice. What's so unique about reading the Megillah twice? Well, imagine if you go to a movie or hear a story. So the first time you hear it, you don't know where the story is taking you. You don't know what's going to happen. So you're on the edge of your seat. You know, is she going to make it? Is he going to make it? Who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? We have no idea what's going to happen. And everything we look at face value, the way it seems at that moment. But once you see the end of the movie and you know how everything works out, so the second time you watch the movie, you look at every little detail from a different perspective. And that's the idea of reading the Megillah twice. By reading the Megillah in the morning again, we're almost looking back on the story. Because once we know the end, so we see each event in relation to the end. And Hashem's hand, God's hand, almost pops out. The first time we read it, God's hand wasn't seen. We thought God was nowhere. The second time we read it, all of a sudden God shows himself in between the lines. We see, oh, Hashem is setting this up. Hashem is setting that up. Each thing we realize is really being set up by Hashem in order to bring the salvation at the end. And this can be connected to an interesting custom. There's a custom to write the word Hamelech on top of each row in the Megillah. Now, Hamelech means Achashverosh, according to the simple meaning. But the rabbis tell us in a deeper sense, when it says just Hamelech, it's a reference to Hashem. Now, I like to say that this fits beautifully with the whole approach we're discussing. Meaning, the idea of the two readings fit nicely with this. We could say that the first reading, the rabbis didn't really mean that HaMelech is God the first time we read the story, because the first time we read the story, everything looks dark and things look desperate for the Jewish people. So that HaMelech is Achashverosh, the simple meaning. But at the end, when we're saved and we re-look at everything again a second time, the Mafreya, in retrospect, which corresponds to the morning reading, it's almost like hearing the story a second time, then we see each event, how it's coming from Hashem. And so the HaMelech on top of each row of the Megillah in the morning reading becomes Hashem. And we see that Hashem is on every single page of the Megillah. This is the idea of how we publicize the miracle of Purim. Why is Purim and the Megillah unique that we have to read it twice? Because the only way to publicize a hidden miracle of this type is to experience it a second time. And with this, we can appreciate why the rabbis went so far to obligate us in this double reading. Because without the double reading, we wouldn't really be publicizing the miracle properly. Because the uniqueness of the Purim miracle isn't that we were saved. It's exactly how we were saved. It's exactly how each event was connected one to the other, connected this entire 9.5, 10-year story as one miracle. Normally, each event is called providence. It's not called miracle. But when each event links up to the eventual saving when Haman was hung, so the entire sequence of events become one big miracle of Purim. And that's what we celebrate, and that's why we read an entire Megillah twice.